Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor Greg Dooley and the pundit Steve Clark. Men, take the mic.
Just what the doctor ordered. It's the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark, and we're proudly presented by Nick Hopwood, who's a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with peak confidence. Visit Nick's website at peakwm.com.
You're a fan of the show, you want to join us? Friday of homecoming week, you can catch the Prof and the Pundit at the iconic historic Brown Jug on Southview. Yes, you're hearing it first. We'll be there around 5 o'clock. That's Friday, October 3rd at the Jug. We'll be drinking, Steve, Buckeye Tears. Their trademark beer. They've been sued by Ohio State. Apparently, I've heard through the grapevine, maybe that's settled. But we got to go there. We'd love to see you there, meet some fans like we did this weekend, and really have fun there at the Jug. So it'll be super fun.
I hope it's bitter. I hope it's a bitter IPA of Buckeye Tears. But even if it's an oatmeal stout, I'm buying it just because I want to buy the name.
I love it.
Maybe that's Ohio State's case.
I love it.
This is fantastic. Look, I don't want to make too much of it. I'm cautioning myself over this considering it's the opponent. But Michigan beating Central Michigan 63-3 was exactly what fans wanted to see. Not only the score, but how they did it. It was Michigan's first win by more than 60 points since beating Rutgers 78-0 in the 2016 game out there in Piscataway. And Bryce Underwood, he was the story in this. He led the team in passing, of course, with 235 yards and a long touchdown to Samaj Morgan. But he also, this is the most important part, led the team in rushing. Yeah. 114 yards and 2 rushing TDs after a mountain of critics for a week talking about we're not using Bryce in the running game and Sharon Moore being cautioned. I've had this thought that Sharon has had for decades. I've seen a lot of seasons just go to zero because their starting quarterback ran it too much, got popped out for the rest of the year, and so was their season. And that's what Sharon is guarding against, but they took the kid's gloves off of Bryce Underwood.
I think I know the answer. You keep saying Sharon, but of course Sharon was not there. He coached all the way up to like almost game time, and now his suspension's on. It wasn't him on the sideline, Steve. Right. Does that matter? Does it matter that Biff Poggi was the guy other than Sharon at all to you? Tell us.
The game was just 12 hours after the suspension started. I'm sure everybody had their marching orders. They have meetings. They diagnose what happened in the game on Sunday. They go back, and by Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, they are collectively agreeing about how to go forward throughout the course of the week. And of course, Sharon was able to stay there until 12:01 Saturday morning. So I believe they all had their marching orders. What's different is that Sharon's not supposed to have any contact at all in any way with the Michigan coaching staff. Now a game has been played. Now there's a whole bunch of different dynamics that goes on. You find out what Bryce can do. You could see that Bryce was able to run. You could see that they were able to open up the passing playbook a little bit more to see if he could handle it, and he did for the most part. So these things kind of change your preparations to Nebraska, except there isn't any allegedly Sharon input on this. Now the side comment. Ask somebody at the fourth quarter what they thought of Michigan today's performance, and the guy in the press box says, well, if they just leave Sharon Moore at home, I think everything's going to be okay.
Here we go. But I love your point, though. It probably matters more today, this week, than it did, say, for the Central Michigan game. Plus, Sharon wasn't calling plays anymore. That was up, he wasn't, doing that before.
Right.
But
yeah, Lindsay was.
But how are we adjusting to this? I got to say, you mentioned our running quarterback. Now, it was Central Michigan. But the way he blew past people and how he altered people who thought they had good pursuit angles, it looked like Denard. He can move.
And that's what it would look like against a MAC opponent or an FCS opponent, which you're seeing a lot of Big Ten teams play. The difference is when you start playing other scholarship-on players who are faster, those 20-yard runs turn into 5.
Yeah.
But it could be enough to keep the chains moving and living on to another day.
Yeah, and another guy who continues to shine, Steve, is my guy who I'm going to talk about because he was in class last week speaking to my NIL, and that's, of course, Justice Haynes. Steve, he put up some big numbers once again.
Another 100-yard game at a touchdown. He had another explosion touchdown called back. I'm not sure it would have mattered, but we had a Jordan Marshall sighting. with 2 touchdowns in that one. This was supposed to be 1A and 1B, and it was more like 1 versus 2.
It has turned into that, yeah.
And it was good to see Jordan Marshall getting in for 2 touchdowns. And then a newcomer who we have heard about and is one of the top receiving guys in the 2025 recruiting class, freshman Andrew Marsh, with a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown on a 23-yard end around. I think it was Jamie Morris who told me right before the season that he expected Marsh to be their leading receiver by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I got to meet him. I forget what it was. Oh, I think it was at the Champion Circle golf outing now that I think about it. I got to say, the way he carries himself, kind of like Bryce, looks like more like a junior or senior. Looks like he's been here before. Looks like he's played a lot of plays. So I think that's probably what Jamie Morris saw. And, of course, talent level, he seems to have it. So excited to see young people get involved.
Very even distribution in the passing game. I really like that. You had 5 pass catchers with more than 30 yards, but no receiver with more than 4 catches.
Yeah, and seeing Marlon Klein back, he got the other tight end, Hogan Hansen, involved. I think that's going to be really important to our offense. This is not to say Dooley's excuse for what happened at Oklahoma, not at all. Again, this is a different opponent, but I think that's what we need to see. And then, of course, the defense. We had a certain guy the entire game this week. He didn't play the entire game, but boy, you felt him. I'm talking about Jashawn Barnum.
2 sacks early on in this one. He was absolutely outstanding. There were 3 early sacks in the game for negative 24 yards, and Michigan was making their presence felt. Barsham was lining up all over the field like we would hope and expect him to. Again, I think some of the kid gloves are starting to come off of this Michigan offense and defense.
Yeah, I mean, at 6'3", nearly 250 pounds, just like you said, they're moving him around. And I think the big moment for me, end of the first quarter, his second sack, they tried to pull either a guard or a tackle to get him. It wasn't even close. He blew past him, the fullback, simply grabbed the quarterback and flung him to the ground, all the while staying on his feet. It was mean, it was impressive and nasty. And he is worth the price of admission on defense. He's great to see.
Wasn't a perfect game. Wasn't a 10.0. Wasn't an A+ for you.
No, there's some nitpicking, right? So one of the things we struggled with that we didn't talk a ton about last week, we mentioned Zavada, but he missed another kick, and it's one of those things where I think fans, people in the press box, we're kind of looking at each other, what's going on here? And we're spoiled, of course, because we had Moody, we had Zavada. We don't miss field goals at home, okay, Steve? He missed one, and we didn't get to see our punter, which is a good thing. However, our punt game was inconsistent last week, so definitely want to see that out there. Underwood, he was really good on those medium-long shots. He had a couple deep balls. The first pass of the game was basically intercepted and went all the way to the ground, and which would have elicited a ton of groans, but the ball popped out, and of course we went down and scored.
That seemed like a mandate. That seemed like an opening statement. We are going to throw the ball as far and as deep as possible on the first play, and we think we're going to complete it, and this is going to get the crowd back into it because the crowd has been certainly kind of thumbs down on Michigan's performance last week. They wanted to start off with a bang.
Hey, TikTok, hey, Twitter haters. Here you go. For first play. Calm down.
The interception that he threw, he got greedy. The underneath coverage was there. You had a wide open Channing Goodwin be able to catch the ball and make the first down. But Michigan just got a turnover deep inside Central Michigan's territory. And then it's just like, let's put the exclamation point on this thing. He tried throwing it on the run. The ball, I didn't say sail on him. It actually kind of hung up and fell short. But the Michigan receiver was behind the double coverage, but the ball happened to fall in front of the double coverage, which is why the interception happened. All learning curves. This is why freshmen aren't seniors.
Yeah, his interception looked more like a punt. It really got some air under it. It was really a rough pass, but he connected on several of those 25 to 35-yard passes, including a beautiful pass to Samaj Morgan for a touchdown. And then he also did that thing, I don't know if it's a counter, I don't know if it's a counter waggle, where he'd spin out and counter against where the line was going and threw some beautiful balls on the run, which just got oohs and ahs from the crowd.
And that's a missing ingredient, being able to throw on the run and be accurate while doing it.
What else, man?
Well, I think the fans got exactly what they wanted to see from Michigan on both sides of the ball. It needed to be dominant, and they were. Bryce not only ran the ball, but he threw on the run, like I said. I didn't see the miscommunication issues. The throws were downfield, were not conservative. And the Wolverines were 8 of 11 on third down. They were intentional with throwing deep on the very first play, as I said. Seeing way too many Big Ten teams winning by 60 or more, I felt Michigan needed to do the same, and they did. The defense did its part by holding Central to negative yards in the first quarter, held them to 89 yards through 3 quarters and just 37 in the air at that time. I don't expect this type of dominance at Nebraska this Saturday, but what they did and how they did it demonstrated to me that they learned something from last week. And this team, and especially Bryce, now knows what it's like to be in a hostile environment for the first time this season. At least they can say they lived through it in Norman, Oklahoma. I think they'll be better prepared for it in Lincoln.
And speaking of living through it, a lot of players got to play, Steve, that we haven't seen. The bench is empty. They got quality time in the big house. We got a lot of new players, transfers, freshmen who got out there. That's a positive
Seeing
thing.
a lot of Big Ten teams getting to do this. And if Michigan wasn't going to be one of those teams through their non-conference schedule to have a game like that, I think was going to be indicative of where Michigan really was in the Big Ten. There was a number of teams that did exactly like that to others. Some of them actually were probably even easier competition than it was for Michigan against CMU and New Mexico. But it was still happening the same, which makes you think that some of these Big Ten teams are going to be really good.
Yeah, we'll get through to some of those games in a little bit. Steve, a few sights and sounds from the week. I got to give a shout out to the people at University Commons. What is this? This was established in the 70s as kind of a retirement community for former U of M administrators and faculty, and they built this beautiful these condos and a kind of a center to get to. And I've spoke to them a couple times. These are my people, Steve.
Okay.
These are I've been a season ticket holder since 1959.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Oh,
right? Yeah. So
that's how they start off every sentence, as it has more weight to it.
And, you go into one of these environments, and, I'm in my 50s, Steve. I feel like a little kid. Hey, professor, do you want a butterscotch, or a Werther's original? I'm in there, and it just makes you feel young. But also, these guys love the history. They love the stories from the past. I shared a bunch of scandals that happened in Ann Arbor. And can I plug myself? That sounds gross, Steve. Did I?
Well, it's better to sound like you plugged yourself as opposed to me plugging you.
Will that make it in the podcast is what I'm wondering now. One thing to plug me, I do these speaking engagements. I'm easy to find. Go to mvictors.com, go to my speaking page, or just connect with me on social media. If you've got a group or a function or a club and you need a speaker, look me up. I love doing it. All right. So who else was out there? Jim Brandsetter, of course, Brandy. Everyone who listens to this podcast certainly knows Brandy. He was the honorary captain. And this got me thinking, one of my projects in my history college athletics class, your final project is to effectively do a documentary. And one of my students wants to do something about the voices of Michigan football history.
Johnny Wrangler to Anthony Carter will be heard until another 100 years of Michigan football is played.
And this isn't like a book report. I asked them to go a little deeper, to answer questions like, what do they mean? Where do they fit in the history and the culture of the program? Because I think you'd argue that you really can't talk about Bo Schembechler, Steve, without talking about Bob Ufer, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's less so today. Where do Jansen and Karsh fit in to the culture? Where do shows like our show, the pregame show, and all that stuff fit in? I think they're really important to people. Where are we going in the future? Why is that? Where have been the most influential things? So congrats to Brandy, obviously a long time, and really kind of the next guy to me as that constant presence after Ufer. Speaking of constant presence, Steve, John Falk, longtime equipment manager, he was up there. I saw Paul Schmidt, who worked with John Falk for Bo and then many others. He actually retired recently. I think it was last week was his final time for serving the team. Great to see these Bo era legends. It was Parents Weekend. For tickets, there are two underrated hard games to get sometimes. People, why are the prices so high? Homecoming is always one because a lot of people do still come back for homecoming. An underrated one is also this one, which is Parents Weekend. Despite being CMU, noon game, kind of a disappointing game before, there was a lot of demand and a lot of people in that stadium. And I think Parents Weekend had something to do with it. So a couple parents. Speaking of radio voices, John Jansen's daughter, Ruby, is on the rowing team, happens to be at Michigan. So not only was John Jansen there to call the game, He was there for Parents Weekend because his daughter goes there. J.J. Putz, the legendary baseball player here, I saw him with Hutch. His daughter, Lauren, how cool is this? Is one of the star young people on the softball team.
Did not know that.
Yeah. My two new best friends, you don't know who I'm talking about, Steve. Cover your ears. I've got two new besties. Paul and Papa Doc, I saw they were for Parents Weekend. Former NFL overall #1 pick. Not our neighbor, Steve. Eric Fisher. He's a Chippewa. And I got to talk to him a little bit, and he asked me about my classes. I talked about NIL. He goes, people ask me all the time, is another NFL #1 pick going to be on a Central Michigan of the world or an Eastern or a small school like that? And people told him, he goes, there's no way we would have been able to keep you. He said even when he was in school, he was getting, quote unquote, offers and like really a lot of pressure to transfer because they knew his talent was so immense. Probably these days.
Were they from SEC schools?
I say the offers and opportunities are too much to pass up, right? Kim Barnes-Arico, guess what, Steve? She's coming into my class for the first time next week.
Nice.
Which class? She could be in any of them. Leadership,
that's right.
History. I love that. She's coming into NIL because I really think that women's basketball in particular, when you add revenue sharing, you add the Caitlin Clark effect, where does she see the world? As someone who's been around a little bit, I'm looking forward to that. What else? I saw John Beilein, who KBA passed in the all-time win totals for Michigan basketball. He's doing great. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Steve. I had to introduce myself. He just looks like a famous, fancy dude. And I saw him upstairs in the rarefied air of the 4th floor. Kind of a cool guy, right?
Yeah.
And represents Michigan.
Yeah.
And he's still in the James Earl Jones hype video.
That's right.
Which is, we should all aspire to one day be somewhere in the hype video.
We are Michigan.
Like mentioned or that. Okay. We saw a few Prof and Pundit fans, particularly at Joe's Garage, Steve. That was always cool when people come up. Maybe they recognize my voice. Certainly they know who Steve is. But that's always fun.
I really want to hear about your guest speaker in one of your classes, Justice Haynes. He stopped by.
Yeah, so I'll say that sometimes with coaches, players, young people, they don't communicate the best, right? So I met this man at the Champion Circle golf outing. I followed up with an email because I talked about, hey, this seems like he went to Alabama. He played against us in the Rose Bowl. He's in the portal. Like, he must have all kinds of information about this new world of college athletics. And followed up with an email, got right back. I'd be honored to come to your class. Hey, can I get your cell phone number? It'd be easier if I can text you. No problem. Here it is. Text. Hey, how about this day? Perfect. I'll be there. Send me the address. Great.
So he was eager to do it.
He is all over it. Eager. I don't know. Maybe he's just an honorable guy who's like, I'll do it. I would like to do it. Amazing. I don't see that often. So that says something. So that to me felt like, okay, this is going to be pretty good. Off the record, he knows what that means. My class understands what that means. I want him to speak freely about his experience. Tell me it all. Like, share it all. No. I'm never going to ask a person to give me the numbers. Don't give me the amounts. But generally, how does this work? He went from his high school, growing up in Georgia, his relationship with Kirby Smart, the offers he got, the decision to go to Alabama, the two schools that he was thinking about the most, Georgia and Ohio State, all right, to be a running back there. He was honest about the South and the SEC. You probably know what I'm talking about, how it worked there before NIL and how people were compensated, why he went to Bama. He got down and dirty on the man that is Nick Saban, who he still respects a ton, that he's not the guy you think. Here's why. He really is this kind of a caring coach. Here are some examples of the things we did with him outside the football building, right? He talked about the Rose Bowl, Steve. Yes, that Rose Bowl. The aftermath of it. The conversations that were held in the locker room about the future of individual players. His thinking then, right, with it. The announcement when Saban made it. The shock that it was, he explained all of that. He talked about the difference between Saban and Kalen DeBoer. He talked about the portal process, how it works, how he looked at that differently than, say, his recruiting cycle. why he ended up Michigan. He talked about the team of people that support him through this journal. Beyond his parents, we're talking about professional people like marketing agents and financial, how he selected the offers, how they came to him. Do they go through a marketing agent or somebody like that? Do they go through your parents? How Champion Circle actually works, how collectives actually work, how they're different from some of the authentic things. He has his own equity stake in a juice brand called Loom. He talked about how that came together. Champion Circle produced some cards after his first game that had his signature on it. How does that work? All of this stuff, Steve, it was fascinating. And one of the characteristics of a great guest, and you know what I'm talking about, is you end up saying, boy, I wish we had an hour, 45 minutes more, whatever, because I have all kinds of new things after reflecting on our conversation that I would have asked him. It was fantastic.
I'm not going to ask you to break code or break confidentiality or anything like that, but I am kind of curious. Through this process in this meeting, did you learn anything that shut down long-held beliefs, or were there things that opened up your eyes to something you didn't realize that was happening?
I'll say a couple things. I assumed that the offers worked a little differently from the schools to young people like Haynes. How they got to them, those channels were a little surprising. The Nick Saban part surprised me. I've heard they love this man. He's not the grumpy, guy you see in the press conferences. I think we knew that. Mm-hmm. He actually, I don't think this is going out, he actually sees a ton of Saban in Sharon as a young Nick Saban. I'm like, that surprised me. And I don't think that's breaking any confidence that he really likes him. I mentioned Ohio State. He was really high on Ohio State, and eventually chose Bama. That's kind of a key of one of the big reasons, other than Sharon, why he ended up here. Do you know why, Steve? Coach Alford, TA, was the running backs coach, and of course recruiting the running backs. He just said this guy is just so amazing. We heard some of that from Donovan Edwards. He really wanted to play for that man at Ohio State, and it didn't work out. Timing, the offer, all of that. He ended up at Michigan. So they had a lot of fun when he came back. Just so impressed with the guy. The kid's going places, and how smart to structure a deal where he has an equity stake in a company. I wonder if we're going to see more of that. And that's Loom, the juice brand, low in sugar, tastes good. That's kind of the philosophy behind it. And just really cool. I wonder if we're going to be seeing more of that, maybe as an incentive. Maybe there are funds that are created around where freshmen can go, hey, you're going to get a part of this fund. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's stock, maybe it's a company. And if you stick around, it'll vest for you, right? So I know they're talking about changing the portal rules. We know that, but when you can do that, but maybe more ways to incent players to stick around through the structuring of some of the deals. I wonder if we're going to see that. So loved it. Hey, props. And look, we'll go a little bit off the field. This is a guy to root for. This is a guy to watch. This is a guy to see what is he going to do the next 50 years of his life, not the next 5, 10. Right?
Well, after 3 games, Justice Haynes is the leading rusher in the Big Ten, seems to be doing things right. And if you want things to be right all the time, especially in your world of IT, you can't go past Maverick Technologies.
You can't, because time is so valuable. Isn't that what it's all about? Why are we so excited about AI? Why are we so excited about technology in all our businesses? It's about getting the most out of your people, the most for your customers. That's what Maverick does. They help you. They bring in the right people. They bring in project managers. They manage your IT solution for you. Get with Maverick at mavericktechnologypartners.com. Maverick, ping them. Ask them a question. Do you have this? We're looking for a CIO. We're looking for a new project manager. Ping Maverick. Find them at mavericktechnologypartners.com.
Greg, while you were talking to people over the weekend, during Parents Weekend, I was talking to some people as well. And one of the discussions that came up was retirement. I was talking with somebody who's thinking about retirement, not exactly quite sure, ready for retirement. But the problem is he's not confident in his retirement yet. And that's where you can get that confidence, is being with our title sponsor, Nick Hopwood at Peak Wealth Management.
100%. You know, we text each other, Nick, Steve, and I. We have a thread just like you do with your friends. And it's half and half stocks, what's going on in the market. But it's a little bit of football, a little bit of game day. But there is nobody better. And I encourage you to follow Nick on social media. He's out there with Peak Wealth Management, and they do little clips with little pieces of advice. But if you want the whole enchilada for that planning for your retirement, get with Nick. Where can you find him, Steve?
At peakwm.com. That's peakwm.com. Our portfolios are probably at the highest it's ever been at the end of this past week. It is about confidence. And the thing is, you may want to retire, but if you don't feel confident in retiring, you probably shouldn't. Again, that's the motto at Peak Wealth Management, to retire with confidence. That's what it means. peakwm.com, peakwm.com.
Steve, one guy who won't retire is Iowa's head football coach. What's going on there? He passed another milestone today. Tell me about it.
There's many people who have thought he should retire years and years and years ago, but Kirk Ferentz is still staying in Iowa City. He just became the all-time Big Ten leader with 206 career wins, passing Woody Hayes with 205, and Alonzo Stagg is number 3 on this list with the University of Chicago Maroons, I think. Am I right in my history?
You are
there?
100%. And again, remember, there's one name on the Big Ten championship trophy. We happen to have 3 of them. It's Amos Alonzo Stagg. It used to be the Paterno Stagg trophy. We all know what happened to Joe Paterno. It's Amos Alonzo Stagg. They have not played a football game in the Big Ten since 1939. So what happened here? What happened with Chicago? Because guess what? There's more and more talk of haves and have-nots. And do we want to play this game of football and this arms race that's happening with all these things? Schools are dropping sports. What's the Big Ten going to look like in 6 years? Is there going to be a Big Ten? Let's talk about Northwestern. Are they going to be around? A lot of this happened with Chicago. History may not be repeating itself, but it's certainly rhyming with Old Man Stagg.
I wanted to share with you a tweet that I saw where they showed a more than half-empty Rose Bowl in Pasadena for the UCLA New Mexico game. New Mexico was Michigan's first opponent of the year. UCLA was 0-2 going into the season, losing badly in their first game and then losing at UNLV in week number 2. And yet the point spread going into the week, New Mexico was the same point underdog in Pasadena as they were in Ann Arbor just 2 weeks prior. I was surprised and shocked to see it. I took the action on that.
Steve.
One on
Big
that
pun.
One on that one. UCLA.
Where are you going to spend the $5 you won?
Yes,
Steve?
exactly. I think I probably lost it with the Oregon Northwestern game. UCLA gets pounded 35-10 at home. It says a couple of things about each team. You just mentioned about where our team's going. The tweet I saw was this half-empty stadium says, not only did we pay New Mexico $500,000 or $1.2 million for coming here, but only like 300 fans showed up for the game, and we're now 0-3. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
At UCLA.
I know it. And, first of all, hats off to New Mexico. I mean, we saw them play their butts off against Michigan, and we knew they had something going here with this.
75 new guys, mostly from the FCS.
Yeah, and so we did. I mean, I think, if I recall, it was a hat tip to this man, Eck, and how he got him going, and it translated here.
Jason Eck might be so good that New Mexico will be looking for their 7th coach in 7 years.
Right. Yeah, he'd be at top of my list. I don't know.
He might be gone in a year.
I'd like to know what he's doing there because I'd like some of that in my life. Okay, the Bruins, they might have reached the lowest level. We don't really have that. I have that hate index on mvictors.com. I don't think I've added the new schools yet. We don't have like a bitter rivalry with the Bruins. We don't have like this big, giant historical thing, at least in football, against them.
Some of those older people you met at Parents' Weekend might have a grudge with Terry Donahue.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Maybe that.
That's a long time ago.
John Wooden, I don't know. Were we wrong at some point? I know we played them in basketball. Okay. But it might be the lowest level. And it may have something to do with the empty Rose Bowl, but I feel bad for them. You don't ever want to be on a podcast that never talks about your school and you're high and mighty, great history, UCLA, and Dooley is saying, I feel bad. I feel bad for him, Steve. I do not.
He once felt bad for Nebraska, too, if I recall.
Maybe a little bit, but not as much, just because it's Nebraska, Steve. We had a lot of fun with that. But it's a big one. I mean, if you look at the schedule, is this the biggest game in the Big Ten next week?
Yeah, so Michigan-Nebraska, I think, is the conference game of the week because of the historic nature. But if you're really inside football and seeing how the season might progress, I think the game of the week could also be said to be Illinois traveling to Indiana. Now, that just does not sound sexy to people.
Does not compute. Does not compute.
I think people are saying, are you out of your mind? The Hoosiers have played nobody, but once again have looked dominant doing it. I think their quarterback is better than last year. And the Illini returned Luke Altmaier and 15 other starters. And I think Altmaier is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. They looked good winning on the road at Duke. They're ranked in the top 10, by the way, right now. And the winner of this game is going to be in playoff contention, at least in the playoff conversation, the winner of this game. So I think it is a huge game.
We should pay attention because, as you mentioned in our preview, like they're in that group with us as that who might be a fourth-ish spot. So we should really pay attention. That's a big one. I'm going to be looking forward to that. Indiana blew out the Sycamores, the Larry Birds at home on Friday.
Yeah, it was like 77, 78 nothing or something like that.
So Michigan, Nebraska, again, just still some bitterness. I mean, it hasn't gone away. Their fans, though, wonderful. If you're going there, really good. A lot of red and a lot of white. What do I mean, Steve? A lot of people wearing red and a lot of white people in Nebraska. In Lincoln, Nebraska, I assure you.
Okay.
All right. Outside of that, you might get a few stingers from 97, people who remember, but incredibly friendly, like the Oklahoma crowd. Although I did get some Prof Pundit listeners telling me about they heard about this or that bad experience in the stadium in Norman. I don't think you're going to get that in Nebraska. But also get ready for every second of the game experience to be sponsored by the local pizza company or the dentist or, Mutual of Omaha.
It's an absolutely huge game for Nebraska, an improving team that has languished in humiliating and torturous defeats over the last decade. To me, most of their losses have been comical in how they always find a unique way to lose games. One of my favorites was when they called a timeout to punt specifically to a specific guy and sent all their coverage to that side of the field, except the punter kicked it to the other side of the field, and Michigan State returned it for a touchdown, untouched and unchallenged. These are one of the unique ways that Nebraska has lost a football game. Last year, they qualified for a bowl for the first time since 2016.
We were doing like a tracker, right?
Yeah, that was like the longest drought in the Power 5, now the Power 4. That has now been vanquished. Quarterback Dylan Raiola was last year's #1 quarterback prospect in the country and is kind of my guide for expectations for Bryce Underwood. Last year, Raiola was 13 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He was right in the middle of the Big Ten ranking last year. In year number 2, I expect him to improve a lot. And key target and receiver transfer Dane Key from Kentucky is one of those reasons. He came into Nebraska with 14 career touchdowns and 1,900 receiving yards. He's the leading receiver after 3 games this year with 3 touchdowns. The offensive line, which has been the toughest for them to rebuild, appears to be getting better, and that's kind of helped their running game. One of their offensive linemen came from Notre Dame, Rocco Spindler, who is Mark Spindler's son of the Detroit Lions, and Michigan wanted him really bad. It was down to Notre Dame in Michigan. He chose Notre Dame, and after last year, Rocco transferred to Nebraska, and it certainly helped that offensive line, and that's helped their running game. Emmett Johnson is the Big Ten's second leading rusher behind only Justice Haynes. And then defensively, they've given up only 7 points and a total of 335 yards in wins over Akron and Houston Christian. Nobody has more than a single interception or more than 1 sack, but the team defense has been really good. They had a narrow win over Cincinnati, 20-17 in Kansas City for the opener. Nebraska and its fans, they will be looking at this game as a measuring stick. The Huskers, this is where it gets a little dicey, Greg. The Huskers have a chance to end a 27-game losing streak to ranked teams.
Holy moly. That's painful. Again, this is a proud program. They feel like they're in that little circle of blue blood college historic programs. That's painful.
I guarantee you something like that's going to be like the Aflac trivia question for this game.
Okay.
It's like, when was the last time Nebraska beat a ranked team? And analysts nationally all over the summer saw Oklahoma and Nebraska as teams that could be dark horses into making the college football playoff, and they all kind of seem to have the confidence that both Oklahoma and Nebraska would beat Michigan because those games were at home.
You call it corn. We called it maize.
So it should be an exciting game. Both of them have statistics to back up their claims as being the superior team. Nebraska is hosting this year. It's going to be incredible.
So no Sharon. This is the last game of the current part of the suspension. There's one more potentially next year. It'll be Biff again. But after this game, a bye week. A bye week for the football team, but not for many fans because Zach Bryan, John Mayer, the concert that they're filling the stadium is, well, and if there was one thing I heard people talking about on the upcoming schedule during the game, just talking to fans and stuff, are you going to the concert? What are your plans? Was a buzz all over the place. And they expect to have close to like 120, 30,000 people in there because they're going to have seating on the field. And all the suites and all the seats filled everywhere. So it's going to be wild.
Would that rival then one of the largest outdoor attended venues?
Yes. This is run by the athletic department in partnership with other people at the university, but the press releases and stuff have been delivered by the football people. Why? This is the new world we're in. We are trying to find new ways to generate money, but there's been a lot of excitement about it. And a lot of the same people who are going to the football games, as I kind of mentioned, will be there. The students are excited about it. It'll be cool.
We are going to review Nebraska, Michigan from next week. I want to finish things up talking about a couple of games and note whether you saw anything that was extremely thrilling and exciting. I mean, Tennessee versus Georgia. Wow. I mean, from start to finish, this was a highlight reel between both teams, flipping leads, big plays. And the last time Tennessee won this game against Georgia was 2016. And to do it, they threw a Hail Mary to win against Georgia. So you're talking about a team that is very, very hungry of exercising some demons. And it says something about streaks. They're so hard to break. And the Vols had a short field goal to end that losing streak against Georgia. They just needed a short field goal as time was expiring in regulation to win it, and it wasn't even close.
Another one of those teams in Tennessee that feels they belong in the conversation with the whatever that small circle of blue bloods is.
Yeah.
But another one who hasn't really been there.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it just hasn't been there.
It's been a while. It was, what was their year? 1999, they won a national championship.
And we say this with a smile because, frankly, so was Michigan until, we all know what happened. We've resurrected that. But, yeah, here we go. So what else? Another team that feels like they're in this, and they've done it. They've cashed the check, and I'm talking about Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, the streak that did break was 9 games in a row over Georgia Tech. That ended yesterday when Tech kicked a 56-yard field goal at the end of regulation as they had no timeouts left. They ran the kicking unit onto the field, tried to set up. The clock was ticking down. The snap was released with about 3 seconds left. The kick went off, and the 56-yarder was good. And Clemson is now 1-2 for the first time since 2014. For those that felt it when Michigan lost to Oklahoma, imagine a team that's expected to make a playoff starting out at 1-2 in the ACC, and it just doesn't look good for Dabo Swinney. No,
so he was one of those guys that didn't quite want to play the game like everyone else was playing, namely the transfer portal. He wanted to, I think he said he wanted to commit to his guys. He was hoping to create a culture where we're still growing young players and putting them in the right position when they're in their second and third year, not filling the holes with the transfer portal. He's changed a little bit of that, but he's got to be under a ton of pressure because they do talk about, and they have seen what it's like to be at the top. Fans' patience have to be really, really short, and you have to wonder, okay, we kind of all know how the SEC in the South, I'll put Clemson in that bucket, rolled. We know we're very confident they were funding their teams with players. Now that NIL has kind of leveled the playing field, is it any surprise that, say, Midwest and Northern teams have been at the top of the hill the last few years? Clemson, are they one of the casualties? Is Alabama one of the casualties because they can't have that special advantage anymore?
Oh,
you have to wonder, Steve.
Yep, Sir Nicholas Saban mentioning it on game day last week. We talked about this on the countdown to kickoff on Saturday morning on the Big 1050, was that Sir Nicholas had talked about how everybody wants to play for the schools down south, but now that there's money, people are finding opportunity elsewhere. It was sort of like it's all our hopes and dreams to have a house out on Lake Michigan, but for some reason, people settled for Lake Erie.
Yeah.
And that was the way that was presented. And of course, when you do it that way, let's bring it back to what was right and what was true and what was genuine. That the SEC is the kingdom and the heaven of college football. Let's turn this wrong and make it a right and return things back to the way they were.
Right.
Where payments were made under the table and between other bagmen and paper bags, or just go ahead and be blunt about it and exchange money on the sidelines just moments after winning a national championship. LSU.
Yeah.
Go ahead and return to the pristineness of college football the way it used to be.
Yeah, and it's Saban's acting like, these players really don't want to go play for Ohio State and Penn State and everything. They would prefer to stay home, but the money's spoiling it. Yeah, Nick. Or did you get all those players because of the things Steve just talked about? Come on, man. Closing notes, Steve. Great time at Oscars once again. Post-game show, Ira Weintraub. Another Bo Era legend. We mentioned some on this call. Bruce Mate showed up. We talked about a lot of these big themes, and what a great Algonquin roundtable at the Oscars afterward, just talking about a lot of issues. Stevie D. We saw the Michigan defender himself, Joe Simon, there, and a lot of our friends. What a great way to celebrate an awesome big.
And Greg, I think the post game actually lasted longer than the game itself. At Oscars. We were there for hours.
It did.
Afterwards. So.
I wasn't, I'm not saying I went right to bed after that, Steve, but I was feeling pretty good. When I got home, it was a lot of fun. Thanks to the post-game show. Thanks to Oscars. And, we'll see him again soon.
When we return, we will review Michigan, Nebraska, the bye week coming up, and talk about our plans in the future. The Professor and the Pundit. Go Blue, Greg.
Go Blue.